I stared at the screen in shock, hands trembling. No explanation, no apology, just a final erasure like I was some wedding crasher instead of the woman who funded the whole thing. Let me rewind. Growing up in Portland, I was the reliable daughter, the one who knew when the mortgage was due, who fixed the Wi-Fi when Dad unplugged it by mistake, who made dinner while Laura cried about boys. I taught myself to file taxes at 16. Meanwhile, Laura, 2 years younger, got help picking out her prom shoes like she was royalty. If I was the calculator, she was the painting everyone admired. And I didn't complain. Not out loud, not when I got ignored at birthday dinners, not when I drove Laura to college tours while Mom gushed about how Laura just needed the right environment to shine. So I worked, studied hard, earned a full scholarship in computer science, graduated summa cum laude, and landed at a Seattle tech startup. While my peers bought Teslas, I lived with roommates and invested. By 28, thanks to a buyout, I had a net worth north of $2 million. That's when the shift happened. Suddenly, I wasn't just the responsible daughter, I was the bank. Dad's car died. I helped. Mom's hospital hours got cut. I covered the mortgage. Laura got dumped. I paid her first month's rent in a new apartment. Each favor was accepted with gratitude. And the casual entitlement of someone who knew I'd never say no. Then came James. Laura met him at some friend of a friend wedding. The man screamed East Coast generational wealth blazers with elbow patches, a trust fund smirk, and a vocabulary that included words like summer as a verb. Within months, Laura was wearing a 2-carat ring and talking about weddings at the Griffin Estate, a place that looks like a castle and costs like one too. Don't worry, she said. James's parents might help, and I've got a plan, but if you could cover the deposit, that would mean everything. Spoiler, James's parents didn't help. My parents offered $10,000 total, and some expenses turned into an avalanche. Venue, flowers, photography, bar service, linen upgrades, calligraphy menus, a live band that played string covers of pop songs each pitched as just one more thing. I transferred money like I was refilling an emotional swear jar every time I felt resentful. I paid again just to keep the peace. By the 2-month mark, I had spent nearly $95,000. And in return, I was excluded from tastings, ignored in planning emails, told I wasn't in the bridal party because Laura didn't want to burden me. When I did show up once surprising her at a menu tasting, I was greeted like a telemarketer. Patricia, James's mother, gave me a once-over and said, "Laura didn't mention you'd be joining," as if I was an uninvited guest at my own investment, and then I heard Laura say it. At a coffee shop, laughing with her maid of honor Madison's just being a control freak. I mean, she's paying, but that doesn't mean she gets to dictate everything. She's exhausting. I walked away before they could see me. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. That spreadsheet I made for her, that wasn't control, that was love. Or at least what I thought love looked like: order, help, presence, but I wasn't her sister anymore. I was her sponsor. The final gut punch came 3 weeks before the wedding. A rehearsal dinner was planned at a country club. I cleared my schedule, booked a hotel. I even sent a playlist suggestion to the DJ. And then, the text. "You're not invited. Laura doesn't want you there." 3 sentences, no punctuation, like I was being casually deleted from her life. My mother followed up with, "It's just a bit of drama. Laura needs a calm environment. Please understand." Calm, after everything I gave. I locked myself in the office bathroom and cried. Not quiet tears, full body, heaving sobs. I had been bought out of my own family with my own money, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I could forgive them. After that text, "You're not invited. Laura doesn't want you there," something inside me didn't just snap, it unraveled. I didn't respond. Not to the text, not to the missed calls, not to my mother's voicemail where she layered guilt like a parfait Madison. "Don't make this harder than it already is. You're making your sister feel unsafe." Unsafe. I had been the one writing checks, not threats, but logic didn't matter. My family had officially rewritten the script. I was the villain in a story they'd cast themselves as victims in. I didn't yell, I didn't beg. Instead, I went quiet. It started small. I stopped responding to wedding updates. I ignored the mass email asking for final RSVP confirmations. When my father called to explain things, I let it go to voicemail, twice. He eventually left a short message: "Your sister's under stress. Maddie, don't let one misunderstanding ruin everything." One misunderstanding. They had removed me from a wedding I paid for. But sure, Dad, let's call that a misunderstanding. The next few days were a blur of half-hearted apologies and passive-aggressive digs. My mother texted again, "You've always been so high-strung. Maybe some distance will help you both reset." My favorite part? She signed it with a heart emoji, like emotional betrayal was something to sweeten with punctuation. I stopped picking up my parents' calls. I didn't delete their numbers. I just muted the noise. At work, I poured myself into code. My team assumed I was deep in project mode, eyes locked on screen, headphones on, laser-focused. They didn't know I was spiraling in silence, rewriting every memory with Laura through the lens of this new reality. Every time I thought about backing down, maybe just showing up, maybe pretending none of this happened, I remembered her voice at that coffee shop. I wish Madison would just send the money and stay out of it. Wish granted. I didn't stop paying, not yet, but I stopped caring. I clicked send on the final invoices without notes. I stopped reviewing menus. I stopped suggesting alternatives. If the band charged double or the linens were wrong, not my problem anymore. And Laura noticed. She texted me 3 days later. "Are you still covering the makeup artist? They need confirmation." I replied, "Ask James or Mom, I'm out." The message went unread for 12 hours. Then my mother called at midnight, leaving a voicemail that sounded like a sermon. "Madison, I know you're hurt, but this silent treatment is cruel. Your sister is terrified you're going to ruin her day out of spite." I laughed. Alone in my dark kitchen. I laughed. Out of spite. They'd frozen me out, lied about me to in-laws, and booted me from the guest list, and somehow I was the threat. It was like standing outside your own house and watching strangers redecorate with your furniture, then telling you to calm down. Still, I didn't fight, not outwardly, but I started gathering things. Bank statements, email threads, contracts, every transaction, every deposit. I printed them and put them in a folder labeled Truth. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but it felt good to hold the evidence in my hands. The wedding website suddenly changed. My name disappeared from the special thanks page, where it once read, "With heartfelt gratitude to Madison for making this dream come true." Now it just said, "Thanks to our family and friends for your love and support." A subtle erasure, clean, cowardly. Meanwhile, rumors trickled in through mutuals. One of Laura's bridesmaids, Kimberly, posted a story with the caption, "Some people can't handle not being the center of attention. So sad when family turns toxic and had drama." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I bookmarked it. Because this wasn't just a family issue anymore, it was a campaign. They weren't just excluding me, they were rewriting me. I was the overbearing sister, the unstable one, the bitter spinster who couldn't be happy for her golden sibling. The irony: I had spent my whole life avoiding drama. I kept my head down, worked hard, never asked for help. And now, suddenly, I was the villain in their rom-com. The spa day I wasn't invited to, the bridal brunch I found out about via Instagram, my mother brushing it off with, "Well, it wasn't a big deal, just a small gathering." Everything became a knife wrapped in niceties. "We just didn't want to overwhelm you. You've been so stressed lately." Laura thought it was best if, gaslighting with a side of guilt. When I finally confronted my mother on a rare call I did pick up, she sighed like I'd asked her to choose between her children. "Madison, I just wish you could let this go. Your sister is getting married. Can't you be happy for her? I funded her wedding." "Mom, how much happier should I be? She's been under so much pressure. James's family expects a certain standard. You don't understand the stress." "No, you're right," I cut in, voice cold. "I only paid for the standard." She didn't respond. The call ended with her saying, "We love you. We just wish you weren't taking this so personally." I stared at the phone long after she hung up, whispering to the silence, "This is personal." Because here's what no one talks about in toxic families: silence isn't passive. It's a weapon. It's how they rewrite history, how they control the story, how they turn the giver into the threat and the taker into the victim. And I was done being the quiet one. The more I pulled back, the more aggressive they got. Laura texted again, "I need your card for final dress alterations. Please reply ASAP." I sent back one word, "No." She replied with, "Wow. After everything I've been through. Unbelievable. No more spreadsheets, no more transfers, no more polite nods while they danced on my boundaries." I wasn't plotting revenge, not yet, but the old Madison, the fixer, the pleaser, the ATM with a smile was gone. and the version replacing her, she didn't need an invitation to reclaim her dignity. The funny thing about silence is how loud it gets when you finally stop filling it with apologies. By the time I'd cut off communication with Laura, my parents, and anyone still riding the "you're just overreacting" train, I started sleeping better. Not peacefully, not yet, but without that weight on my chest. You know the one, the kind of weight that makes you check your phone every 30 seconds for the next guilt trip. But then came the unraveling, and it started, of all things, with a mistake, a forwarded email from the wedding photographer meant for Laura that somehow landed in my inbox. Attached is the final invoice. Per our previous conversation, James's parents have confirmed they will not be contributing to this service, as originally discussed. Wait, not contributing? I scrolled down, eyes darting. The email thread revealed that James's parents hadn't just backed out, they were never in to begin with. Not for the photographer, not for the venue, not for the $12,000 flower installation that Laura had gushed over. They hadn't paid for a single thing. It was all me. Every luxury, every champagne toast, every imported orchid, all funded by the sister they'd pushed out of the pictures. I started digging. It didn't take long. All the spreadsheets I'd built in Google Drive, invoices, estimates, payment confirmations, had comments left by Laura that now read like demands instead of requests. Can you just Venmo me for this? The vendor doesn't take cards. Can you sign for this one? James said we should use your name since you're the primary contact. We can pay you back after the honeymoon. Promise. The comments weren't collaboration, they were camouflage. Then, during a call with my financial advisor to review end-of-quarter planning, she said, "Madison, not to pry, but do you still intend to liquidate another $20K for wedding expenses?" No, I said, no, I absolutely do not. Because here's what I hadn't told her yet, or anyone. Really, I had already gone through $95,000. I was teetering on a financial cliff I hadn't even seen coming because I'd been too busy being the hero, the support system, the family's emotional and financial scaffolding. And they didn't just fail to catch me. They pushed. I reached out to Rachel, my cousin, and until recently, Laura's reluctant bridesmaid. She was the only one who hadn't chosen a side outright. The only one whose Instagram stories still included things like sunsets and dogs instead of cryptic posts about betrayal and family drama. Rachel picked up on the second ring. "Are you okay?" she asked. No pretense. I told her everything, from the "you're not invited" text to the email about James's parents, the spa exclusion, the dress invoice Laura still expected me to pay. There was a pause. Then she said something that made me feel seen for the first time in months. "Madison, I hate how they've treated you. And I hate that I stayed quiet." Turns out Rachel had receipts too. She shared screenshots from a private bridal party group chat Laura had accidentally left open on Rachel's phone during a dress fitting. Kimberly, has Madison finally stopped trying to control everything? Laura, hopefully. I told Mom she was spiraling. Patricia said we should keep her away from the guests. Another bridesmaid. Seriously, she paid for everything though. Laura, she wanted to. We didn't ask. Besides, she needed to feel important. Feel important. I wasn't just the villain in Laura's story. I was the charity case they dressed in resentment and paraded around like a benefactor with boundary issues. But here's where things shifted from personal to legal. I revisited all the contracts I'd signed. My name, my payments, my paper trail. Then I looked into something I hadn't thought mattered before: vendor contact clauses. Many included non-refundable deposits only if the cancellation was made by the client. I was the client. If I pulled out, they had 72 hours to replace my payment or cancel. That's when it hit me. I had the power. They wanted me invisible but compliant, silent but giving, excluded but funding. They couldn't have it both ways. So I made a list, not a metaphorical one, a real list, on my dining table. 2 columns. Left side, everything I'd paid for. Right side, vendors with cancellation clauses, refund potential, or payment holds. Next to each line item, I scribbled names: the florist who gushed about Laura's vision, the venue manager who'd emailed me holiday cards, the DJ who thanked me for covering the upgrade last minute. They all knew me as the client, and none of them had heard a single word about me being uninvited. Yet somehow, James's parents, who contributed nothing, had opinions about my presence. I wasn't angry. I was done. Rachel offered to help. "If you want to make a statement," she said, "I'll support you. I'll tell the truth." So we planned, quietly, meticulously. I contacted each vendor under the guise of updating payment methods. I asked casual questions, gauged flexibility, confirmed which services were still pending payment. Most were happy to chat. Many sympathized. One even whispered, "Between us, we've seen this kind of drama before. Just let us know what you want to do." And what I wanted was to be free, not just from the financial burden, from the dynamic that had defined me since I was old enough to carry someone else's baggage. Laura wasn't just a bridezilla, she was a lifelong user, and my parents had enabled it under the illusion of fairness. But this wasn't about fairness anymore. This was about truth. The day after my deep dive, I emailed Laura a single message with no subject line. "Per your wishes, I will no longer be contributing to or involved in your wedding. Future communications should be directed to the vendors. I've notified them accordingly." No threats, no emotion, just fact. She didn't reply. My mother did. A paragraph of panicked texts about timing and embarrassment, and what will James's family think. I didn't respond. That silence. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Because here's what toxic families hate the most. When the scapegoat stops apologizing, and when the fixer drops the tools, when the doormat gets up and locks the door. I wasn't going to burn anything down. I was just going to walk away. But I would leave a trail of canceled contracts and returned invoices behind me, a paper trail of proof that the golden child didn't fund her own fairy tale. I did, until now. 3 days before the wedding, I stood at my window, sipping black coffee and watching the rain beat against the glass for the first time in a long time. I wasn't bracing for a phone call or checking my inbox for an invoice. I'd already sent my final email the night before. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing all financial support for the wedding of Laura and James. All services booked under my name have been canceled or returned to vendor discretion. I will not be attending. I am no longer involved in this event in any way. There was no dramatics, no uppercase shouting, just clean, measured detachment. I expected silence. What I got was chaos. The calls started at 7:02 a.m. My mother, my father, Laura's best friend. Even James's older sister, whom I'd only met twice, I didn't pick up a single one. By 8:15, I had 27 missed calls and a string of voicemails that sounded like a slow-motion breakdown. I listened to the first few. My mother, breathless Madison, "You cannot do this." The flowers, the chairs, people are flying in. My father, furious. "This is immature. You want to be petty? Fine, but your mother's in tears." Laura, sobbing between each word. "Why are you destroying my wedding?" I deleted the rest without listening. Because I wasn't destroying anything. They were just finally seeing what their wedding looked like without me propping it up. Then came the flood of texts. "Laura, you're punishing me because I set a boundary." "Mom, this isn't how family behaves." "Dad, grow up. You'll regret this." Each one felt like a confirmation they didn't miss me. They missed my resources, my silence, my usefulness. But what broke me and then remade me came at 9:12 a.m. in the form of a group email. Subject: Urgent Wedding Day Salvage. From Patricia Reynolds, James's mother. She CC'd my parents, Laura, and in what was clearly a mistake me. I read it twice before saving a copy. "We warned Laura that Madison was unstable. This behavior is proof. Regardless, we cannot allow this to derail Saturday. We will front the remaining expenses temporarily if Madison refuses to correct this, but I advise limiting her involvement going forward. This family has appearances to maintain." That was it. Unstable. Not upset, not understandably hurt, not justifiably furious. Unstable. And just like that, the last sliver of doubt evaporated. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. It was a smear campaign, one I had funded, invited into my life, and been gaslit to excuse, all in the name of family. I wrote back calmly and professionally. "Hi Patricia, thank you for confirming your view of me. For clarity, I have paid $95,732.14 toward this wedding, which has now been retracted via formal vendor cancellation and refund processes. I am not unstable. I am no longer complicit. Any future accusations will be addressed legally. Best, Madison." She didn't respond, but James did 5 hours later. "I understand this has gotten out of hand. Maybe we can talk." I stared at the message, stunned. Talk. He'd never once asked about finances, never acknowledged I was bankrolling his wedding, Now he wanted to talk. I replied with a single line, "Have your lawyer contact mine." I didn't have a lawyer yet, but I knew a guy, Alan, a friend from college turned estate attorney, who owed me a favor after I helped his niece get into a coding boot camp last year. I forwarded him Patricia's email and every receipt I had. Alan called within the hour. "Madison, if they try to sue you, and I don't think they will, you're untouchable. But just in case, I'll draft a cease and desist for defamation. No charge." I hung up, stunned by the clarity of it all. For years, I thought my worth was tied to what I could do for my family. Now, with one decisive move, I was discovering the opposite. I'd never been safer than when I stopped trying to be useful. The next day, the eve of what was once our wedding, as Laura had once called it, I booked myself into a lakeside resort 3 hours from Seattle. No phone service, no Wi-Fi, just solitude, the scent of cedar and a roaring fireplace. I brought wine, a stack of novels, and the journal I'd started the night I was uninvited. And I didn't check my phone once. When I returned home 2 days later, I had 64 texts, 18 voicemails, and 3 new messages from previously silent extended relatives. My Aunt Diane wrote, "I can't believe what Laura said about you. I wish I'd spoken up sooner." My cousin Paul added, "Just so you know, you weren't the only one she's taken money from." Even Uncle Victor, the family's perennial fence-sitter, chimed in with, "Proud of you for standing your ground. Wish I had." Turns out I wasn't alone. I was just the first to say enough. Then came the fallout. The wedding did happen. Kind of. Patricia and James paid to move it to a local event hall at the last minute. No estate, no gourmet chef, no string quartet. The florist managed a scaled-down version of the centerpieces. The DJ was a teenager from Craigslist. According to Rachel, who declined her role as bridesmaid, but attended the reception for the drama, it was like watching a stage collapse while the actors tried to smile. Laura barely looked at James. James didn't make eye contact with his parents. My own parents sat in the corner, visibly tense, the atmosphere plastic and trembling. Rachel sent me a photo someone had snapped of the new venue folding chairs, mismatched table linens, and a wedding cake from a grocery store. Laura's caption, "All that matters is love, #resilient bride." I saved the photo, not out of spite, but because it was the first honest picture I'd ever seen of my family thrown together, uncomfortable, and pretending everything was fine. A few days later, I received a manila envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Laura. "You were always the strong one. I guess I didn't realize how strong. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought you'd cave. I'm sorry you didn't feel valued. I guess I never said thank you the right way. No apology for calling me unstable. No ownership for the lies. Just a vague olive branch, a recognition that I didn't break." I didn't respond, because forgiveness isn't the same as access, and I was done giving mine away. They called it drama. I called it dignity, and it was long overdue. Six weeks after the wedding, that wasn't. I stood in my kitchen slicing lemons for tea when a notification popped up on my phone. "You have a new follower, @LauraRising." I didn't click, I didn't even hesitate, I just blocked it. Because even rebranded, even filtered through pastel mood boards and vague captions about new beginnings, I knew exactly what that account was: damage control. And I wasn't here for it. Not anymore. What I was here for was silence, and intention, and figuring out who I actually was when I wasn't being the dependable one. The buffer, the bank, the blueprint. I took a leave of absence from work, something I'd never dared in a decade of corporate ladder climbing. My boss, a woman who once told me, "You don't just carry the team, you are the team," simply nodded when I explained. "You've been holding too much for too long," she said. "Go. Rest. Figure out what's yours and what's not." So I did. I booked a month at a writer's retreat in Northern California, not because I wanted to write a novel, though part of me does, but because it promised exactly what I needed: structured solitude, natural beauty, and absolutely no pressure to perform. The cabin was nestled among towering redwoods, with a porch that overlooked a winding creek and a kitchen stocked with teas I couldn't pronounce. No Wi-Fi, no mirrors. Even the first week, I slept 12-hour nights, midday naps, dreams without deadlines. By week 2, I started walking. 3 miles, then 5, then 7, until my legs ached and my mind quieted enough for clarity to seep in. I began journaling again, not about Laura, not about the wedding, but about me, about how I'd learned to mistake compliance for kindness, How I'd been praised for being low maintenance while internalizing that my needs were secondary. How every thankless favor felt like a down payment on belonging, and how I was finally ready to stop paying. One afternoon, sitting under a redwood older than most civilizations, I wrote something I hadn't allowed myself to say aloud. I am not responsible for making anyone else comfortable at the cost of my own sanity. I underlined it 3 times, and something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was more like a joint popping gently back into place after years of dislocation. That night, I cried for 3 hours straight, not because I was sad, because I was finally, no longer numb. After returning to Seattle, I downsized. Sold the condo, bought a smaller house near the water with an overgrown garden and a quiet back porch, somewhere that felt mine. I donated the old wedding planning binders, boxed up the last remnants of obligation, and sent a small, silent message to my past self. You did what you could, and now you're free. My parents reached out again in the spring. At first it was subtle, a hope you're well card from my mother, an email from my dad with a link to an article about tech layoffs. Subtle, right? I didn't reply. Then, one Sunday morning, I saw them sitting at a corner table of my favorite cafe. Not by accident. I almost turned around, but something in me, not rage, not revenge, just calm, said, "You're ready." They stood when they saw me. My mother's eyes welled instantly. My father looked older, smaller. "Hi," I said, sitting down. "This has to be honest, or it's over before it begins." My mother nodded. My father said nothing, and I told them all of it. From the first time they handed me Laura's problems to solve at age 10, to the moment I sat alone in a bathroom stall reading a text that ripped the floor out from under me. They listened. To their credit, really listened. "We thought we were protecting her." My mother whispered. "You were abandoning me," I replied, over and over, until I stopped expecting anything different. They didn't beg. They didn't deny. They didn't even excuse. My father simply said, "I didn't realize what we were doing. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like to earn your trust again, if you'll let me." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. Not because he said the right words, but because I wasn't waiting for them anymore. Healing, it turns out, doesn't always look like reunions and breakthroughs. Sometimes it's sitting across from people who hurt you and realizing their power over you is gone. Sometimes it's just the absence of fear. Laura didn't reach out again. Not directly, but through Rachel. I learned she and James had separated, that she was back in Portland, working toward a teaching certification, living in a modest apartment. No more photo shoots, no more hashtags. I didn't smile at the news. I didn't scoff. I just let it be. Because her life, like her choices, was never mine to carry. Months passed. I filled them with yoga and coding bootcamp mentoring, late-night beach walks, and dinner parties with friends who didn't expect me to solve their lives. And then, one evening, while repotting succulents on my porch, my neighbor stopped by with a bottle of wine and a question, "Mind if I join?" His name was Brian, soft-spoken, laughed with his eyes. He asked real questions. He listened to the answers. When I told him carefully, slowly about the wedding, the fallout, the rebuild, he didn't flinch. That wasn't family. He said, that was exploitation wrapped in sentiment. And just like that, I exhaled. He saw it. And more importantly, he saw me. I don't know where that will go. Maybe nowhere. Maybe everywhere. But what I do know is this. I am no longer the family fixer, the designated adult, the backup plan. I am a woman who chose herself. Finally, and that, more than any revenge, is the victory. Story 2. I should have seen it coming. With Olivia, every favor was a test. Every "can you help me" came loaded with emotional blackmail, and every no meant open warfare. So when my phone buzzed that Thursday afternoon and her name popped up, I already knew I was about to be drafted into something I didn't want. "Hey, can you watch the kids this weekend?" "No, how are you?" No preamble, just straight to business. I blinked, sitting in the parking lot outside Abby's school. "This weekend?" "Yeah," she said. "Eli and I are going to that spa resort in Sonoma. Just Friday to Sunday. The twins are easy, I swear. Just keep them alive." I almost laughed. "I can't. I promised Abby we'd go camping. Just the 2 of us. We've been planning this for weeks." Silence. Then the click of her hanging up. 2 hours later, my phone blew up. Not with her, no. She was smarter than that. She dropped a bomb in the family group chat instead. "Zara refuses to help. Family means nothing to her anymore. Some people only show up when there's something in it for them. The group chat exploded. A few passive-aggressive, "That's disappointing" comments, a couple of eye-roll emojis, and then radio silence from my dad. Until 9 p.m., he called. No greeting. Just, if you won't help your sister in her time of need, don't expect to be remembered in the will. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said, okay, and hung up. Because here's the thing. Olivia didn't know I had receipts. A lot of them. And she had no clue how close she was to setting herself on fire. It started a year ago on Mom's birthday. Olivia had a few too many glasses of Chardonnay and called me at midnight. For 90 minutes, she ranted how pathetic it was that our parents still lived in the house they bought in the 80s. How she hoped they'd finally kick it soon so she could get her half of the inheritance and move to Costa Rica. She called our dad a rusty lawn gnome and said Mom was a walking antique with a wine problem. I didn't laugh. I just hit record. After that, I started collecting everything. Voice notes, screenshots, even a video she sent a friend, joking that she tells her kids grandpa might not wake up tomorrow to make them brush their teeth faster. And the wildest part, she thought I agreed with her. She thought we were a team. She didn't know I had a folder on my phone labeled Olivia's Hits, and I wasn't saving them for revenge. Not at first. But when she painted me as a heartless traitor and my dad backed her up without asking a single question, something inside me snapped. The family barbecue was coming up. Everyone would be there. Eli, Mom, Dad, and I'd finally show them a little truth. Not the whole vault, just enough. I wasn't planning to make a scene. I just wanted to watch Olivia unravel. The day was sunny. Kids were running in the yard. The grill was already fired up by the time I arrived. Mom was setting out her world-famous deviled eggs like she was preparing for the Pope. Emma brought some ridiculous vegan cake. Eli was working the grill like a man who just discovered meat. Olivia, she greeted me like nothing had happened, hugged me, kissed my cheek, said, "Look who decided to be a sister again." I smiled, because she had no idea what I was about to do. We made it through potato salad and awkward small talk. I waited until Eli sat down by the fire pit with a beer. Then I handed him my phone. "Open to a video file." "Thought you'd want to see this," I said casually. He pressed play. Her voice filled the speakers, drunk, cruel, laughing. I swear, if Eli ever finds out the twins aren't even his, that's when he stopped the video. He didn't yell, didn't scream, just stood up and walked toward the house. Olivia saw the shift in his face and panicked. She followed him, barefoot, dropping her wine glass on the patio. Silence. Then the yelling started. Mom asked, "What's happening?" Emma's eyes widened. She texted me 2 words, "You did it." And then Olivia burst outside again, screaming my name. "You evil little snake. You hacked my phone, you're lying." Eli followed behind her, holding a folder. He didn't look at her, didn't say a word. He turned to me and said, "Thanks." Then looked at Olivia and added, "I'm taking the kids. I'll be in touch." The yard froze. Even the neighbor's dog stopped barking. My dad stood there, stunned. Mom looked pale. And then I dropped the last piece. I didn't hack anything. She sent it all to me. Because she thought I hated you too. She called you cockroaches in a text, said if the house burned down with you in it, it'd be a win. They didn't believe me. Until I showed them, my mom sat down without a word. My dad walked away. Olivia. She just stood there, rage turning her face red. Then she leaned in, so close I could smell the sour wine on her breath, and whispered, "This isn't over. Zara, I swear on my life, it's just beginning." She wasn't wrong. 2 weeks passed. No texts, no calls, not from her, not from Dad, not even Mom. Emma checked in, said Eli filed for divorce the day after the barbecue. No confirmation yet on the paternity tests, but he wasn't waiting. Then one night, 2 a.m., my doorbell rang. I live in a quiet neighborhood, no drama, no random visitors. I checked the doorbell cam. No one. But when I opened the door, there was a box on my porch, wrapped in pink. Inside was a doll. Blonde, melted face. Its dress was slashed, and taped to its chest was a note. "I hope your little princess sleeps well tonight." I didn't hesitate. Called the police, handed over the folder, the videos, everything. They issued a temporary restraining order the next morning. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat outside Abby's door with a baseball bat and every light on in the house. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't petty family drama anymore. This was war. The next morning, I stood on my porch watching Abby ride her scooter down the driveway, trying not to show the fear in my gut. The melted doll was still with the police. They'd taken the note for handwriting analysis. The officer said it could take weeks, maybe longer. I didn't wait. That same day, I replaced every lock in the house, installed motion-triggered lights, cameras, even door sensors. Abby didn't know why, just that we were upgrading security like spies. She loved it. I didn't. Emma came over that evening. She didn't say much, just brought ice cream and hugged me like she knew I was close to breaking. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, lied. "Yeah." 3 days later, the school called. Someone had tried to pick Abby up early. A woman, no ID, said she was Abby's aunt. They didn't release her, thank God. But the fact she even tried, that was the first time I felt true panic. Not just fear, but the kind of cold that crawls under your skin and refuses to leave. I filed another report. This time, the police took it seriously. They stationed a patrol car on our block. Still, they warned me, don't confront her. Don't provoke her. But I wasn't waiting to be hunted. I remembered a photo Olivia once sent me years ago. She was drunk, half asleep on a couch, cigarette in one hand, her daughter curled in her lap. I never thought much of it back then. Now I forwarded it to Eli. He called me 10 minutes later. She used to leave the stove on. He said, just walked away mid-cooking. I thought it was absent-mindedness. He paused, then added, she tried breaking into the Airbnb last night. I think she was high, said I was stealing her life. He sounded exhausted. He asked if I'd testify if it came to that. I said yes. And that's when things really started to unravel. A few days later, Eli and I met at a courthouse to file for emergency custody. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. She's leaving me voicemails, he said, slurred, half crying, half screaming. He showed me one where she accused him of teaming up with my bitch sister to erase me. We filed everything, screenshots, messages, photos, videos, but the real bomb dropped that night. Around 10 p.m. I was locking up when I caught a whiff of something outside. Smoke? It was faint at first, then stronger. I ran out, barefoot, and saw flames licking up the edge of my fence. The corner closest to Abby's room. Someone had soaked it in something flammable. I grabbed the hose and started spraying, screaming for my neighbor to call 911. The fire department arrived within minutes. They put it out before it reached the house, but the inspector confirmed it accelerant, arson, intentional. Targeted? I didn't sleep that night, neither did Abby. I stayed in her room, phone in one hand, pepper spray in the other. The next day, I met Eli at a coffee shop. He looked like hell. She's gone, he said. Gone. She packed a suitcase, left a note, just said, you win. That's it. He slid a USB across the table. She left her laptop behind. I looked through it. The files were unsettling. Emails, messages, photos. One was to our dad, full of lies. She'd told him Eli hit her, sent fake photos, stock images of bruises with her face edited on. She said I was plotting to steal the inheritance, that mom was senile, that dad needed to act fast. That's why he turned on me. I felt sick. There was another email, half confession, half threat addressed to me but never sent. She admitted to parking outside my house at night, watching, waiting. Said she had a crowbar in the trunk just in case. That was the final straw. I took everything to the police. Then I called a lawyer, because Olivia wasn't just unstable anymore. She was dangerous. And I was done waiting for her to hurt someone. The restraining order was extended, 500 feet from my home, job, Abby's school, no contact. For the first time in weeks, we slept through the night. Eli moved into a secure rental. Emma checked in daily. I upgraded the cameras, floodlights, a full security system with facial recognition. But peace with Olivia. It's never real, just a pause. Then came Sunday morning. Dad, Abby said, pointing out the window. That black car is back. I looked. A black sedan, tinted windows, just idling across the street. As soon as I stepped outside, it rolled away. Slow, deliberate. The same car had circled our house the night before. I called the detective. He sounded uneasy. We can't do much unless they step onto the property. Just keep documenting. I didn't like that answer. So I dug through old messages, photos, clues, and that's when I remembered something. At the barbecue, while Olivia was melting down, her phone lit up. One name, Grant. An old friend from high school. I barely remembered him. But when I found his Facebook, it hit me. Private profile. One public post from a year ago. Loyalty is doing what needs to be done even if no one thanks you. I ran a background check. 3 states. Multiple restraining orders, one arrest for stalking, and most important last month, he bought a black Dodge Charger. I called the detective back. Within 48 hours, they confirmed it. Grant had been in the area. No fixed address. Last seen checking out of a motel the day after the fire. Then came the twist. They found Olivia's car, abandoned at a trailhead in Oregon. Keys in the ignition, purse inside. No sign of her. Some thought she disappeared. I knew better. This was misdirection. And then my email pinged. No subject, no message, just a photo attachment, taken from behind a tree. Blurry, but you could see Abby on the swing. Her backpack, her hair. Timestamp, yesterday. Someone had been at the park, 3 blocks from our house. I called the detective. No answer. I didn't wait. I drove straight to the station and handed it all over. Every email, every file, Grant's name, Olivia's trail of threats. They told me the same thing. Stay home. Stay alert. Stay armed. But I already was. That night, I sat in the dark, staring out the window. Abby was asleep. And I waited because Olivia wasn't gone. She was close. And I had a feeling she wasn't working alone anymore. The next few days were a blur of bad sleep and worse thoughts. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every car that slowed down outside made my heart race. I kept Abby close, drove her to school myself, walked her in, waited in the car until she came out. She thought it was special dad time. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. Eli and I stayed in constant contact. He'd upgraded his rental to a gated unit with monitored entry, but even he started to feel it, that electric, invisible tension that wraps around your ribs and squeezes a little tighter every day. And then it snapped. Thursday, 3:30 p.m., my neighbor texted me. It was a photo, blurry, zoomed in from across the street. A woman in a hoodie, sunglasses, standing on the corner, just standing, staring straight at our house. I checked my cameras. Nothing. She was gone by the time I looked. 2 hours later, another email came in. Same burner address. This time, it wasn't a photo. It was a 10-second video. No sound, just a dim, shaky clip of the inside of my garage. The camera panned slightly, then someone stepped into frame. They looked straight into the lens and held something up. A necklace. Abby's. The one she'd lost 2 weeks ago. The one we tore the house apart looking for. It hadn't fallen behind the couch. They'd been inside. I felt something snap in me. Fear turned into something sharper, cleaner. Resolve. I made one more call. Trey, a friend from way back, ex-military, private security now. We hadn't talked in years, but when I told him what was going on, he didn't hesitate. Be there tomorrow? 0900, don't touch a thing. Trey showed up with a duffel bag and a calmness that made me feel less crazy. We swept the house, room by room, vent by vent, found 2 wireless cameras. One taped inside an air duct in the hallway. Another hidden in a fake plant in the living room. They've been watching, he said, for weeks, maybe longer. He replaced everything, wired the house with encrypted, offline motion sensors, gave me a backup power supply, a panic button, and a small piece of steel he told me to keep in the nightstand. Loaded, safety on. If you're not comfortable using it, lock it up and call me, but don't pretend this isn't real. I didn't argue. That night, it rained. Thunder rolled in, the kind that shakes your windows and settles in your chest. Just past midnight, my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Driveway. I pulled up the live feed. Someone stood at the edge of the property, hood up, still as a statue. Then the screen glitched, just for a second. When it came back, the driveway was empty. Trey reviewed the footage. Signal jammed, he said. They knew where your blind spots were. They've done this before. My blood ran cold. The next morning, the police called. They'd found Olivia, but not how I expected. She was in custody. Not for arson, not for stalking. She'd been caught breaking into a man's house at 400 AM with a knife. The man, Grant Duvers. The one from the car? The one who'd been helping her. Apparently, she turned on him, claimed he'd taken things too far, that she was trying to leave him, that he became obsessed. The police didn't buy it. Grant pressed charges. They searched Olivia's motel room, found printed maps of my neighborhood, a hand-drawn layout of my house, notes about Abby's school schedule. They also found her phone, the same one she used to send the photos and videos. When they confronted her, she tried to say I faked them all, but Grant, he flipped instantly, handed over everything, text threads, emails, even a voice recording of Olivia planning the fire. She promised me a new life, he said. Said she'd make Eli disappear. Said she'd take care of you next. He looked broken and terrified. I don't think he realized she'd set him up. 2. The emails made it clear she'd been playing both sides, calling him her insurance policy, telling him one thing, telling my dad another. But there was one email that chilled me more than anything else. It was to our dad. She told him she was afraid, said Eli was abusive, said I was manipulating mom, and attached photos of bruises, fake, stock images, pasted over her face with sloppy edits. That's why Dad had turned on me. He thought he was protecting her. When I told Eli, we drove straight to the station. We didn't want her gone. We wanted her done. The detective asked us one thing. Do you want to press charges? Eli didn't even hesitate. Yes. The court date was set. Grant would testify. The evidence was overwhelming. Stalking, arson, conspiracy, child endangerment. The whole digital trail was a disaster for her. When the day came, she still had that look on her face, like she was waiting for someone to jump up and say it was all a mistake, like the whole thing was a prank that just got out of hand. But no one came. Not Dad. Not Mom. Emma sat beside me, her hand on mine, steady. Eli testified first, calm, direct. He told them about the voicemails, the break-ins, the fear. Then the detective took the stand, laid out the recordings, the photos, the fire report, and then it was my turn. I told the court everything, from the babysitting call to the doll on my porch, every threat, every screenshot, and finally the video in the garage, the one with Abby's necklace. When it was Olivia's turn, she tried to cry, said she was mentally ill, that Grant manipulated her, that she never meant to hurt anyone. But the emails told a different story. So did the map of my house. So did the paternity test order that Eli submitted, confirming what she'd always feared. Neither twin was his. The judge didn't need long. Guilty, stalking, arson, conspiracy to commit assault, child endangerment, 10 years. No parole for 5. As they led her out, she didn't scream at the judge. She didn't cry. She turned to me and hissed, "This isn't justice, you just got lucky." But she was wrong. This wasn't luck. This was the consequence of a lifetime of manipulation finally snapping back. The courtroom emptied. Eli looked at me, and for the first time in months, he smiled. "Thank you," he said. I nodded. Not because I needed the gratitude, but because for once, she couldn't twist the ending. The courtroom emptied slowly. I remember standing there, half stunned, staring at the spot where Olivia had just been. She was finally gone. Not gone like she'd vanished into the night. Gone like she couldn't hurt us anymore. And somehow, I still didn't feel safe. That's the thing no one tells you about getting justice. It doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like stepping off a battlefield and realizing you still have shrapnel under your skin. Eli walked out with his lawyer. His shoulders had dropped for the first time in months. He had full custody now. Both kids were with him. They didn't know everything, but they knew enough. That their mom was sick, that she couldn't be around them anymore. He promised to raise them better than that. Kinder, stronger, honest. We didn't talk about Olivia much after that, because she no longer controlled the narrative. A few weeks passed. The media got hold of some of it. Local papers, a few blogs. Suburban arson plot exposed. Mother of 2, charged in fire. Stalking case. We didn't comment. We just went quiet. The silence was a strange kind of luxury. Abby started sleeping through the night again. She stopped jumping every time the doorbell rang. Emma came over for dinner more. So did Eli and the kids. We laughed again. At dumb things, at nothing, the way families are supposed to. My mom? She wrote me emails. Didn't send them. I know because she once accidentally copied me on one meant for Emma. It was titled, "What I Should Have Said to Zara." It started with, "I believe the wrong daughter. My dad hasn't spoken to me since the barbecue. Not directly, at least. But I caught him sitting in his truck outside my house once. He didn't get out, just sat there, then drove away. That was enough for me. I wasn't chasing apologies. Not anymore." One night, I stood on the porch while Abby slept. The street was quiet. No strange cars, no figures in the shadows, just stillness. Trey had taken back the backup gear, said I didn't need it anymore. He was right, but I kept the camera system. Not out of fear, out of memory. I needed the reminder that it really happened, that I survived it. Olivia had been sentenced to 10 years, 5 minimum before parole. Grant got less time, but he testified, cooperated, and maybe he was just another pawn to her. Another weapon she turned loose without thinking twice. But I wasn't afraid of him anymore, because I knew his type. And now so did the courts. Eli moved into a new place closer to the lake, a house with a yard and a sunroom. The kids helped him paint the kitchen. He sent me a photo one day, his daughter with purple streaks in her hair and her hands covered in specks of blue paint. She says thank you, he wrote, for keeping us safe. I stared at that message for a long time, then replied simply always. Abby and I took our camping trip after all. We pitched a tent under the stars, made s'mores, watched fireflies dance in the trees. She asked if Olivia was ever coming back. I said, not to us, sweetheart, not again, and she nodded, like she understood. More than a child should ever have to. Sometimes I still get twitchy at night, still check the door twice, still glance at the street for that black sedan. But it's not fear anymore. It's vigilance. It's experience. It's surviving. Emma told me once, during one of our late-night phone calls, you didn't destroy her, you just didn't let her destroy you. And that stuck, because Olivia was always the match and the gasoline. She lit fires and blamed everyone else for the smoke. But this time, she couldn't run from the burn. This time, her lies were louder than her charm. And this time, we were finally ready to listen to the truth. The last time I heard from Olivia was a letter, postmarked from prison. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was short, sloppy handwriting, no apology. Just 3 lines. You'll never know the whole story. They still love me more than you. This isn't the end. I burned it in the sink, watched the paper curl and blacken. No rage, no satisfaction, just closure. She was right about one thing. I don't know her whole story, but I know mine, and that's enough. I still think about what would have happened if I had just babysat that weekend. If I had caved, if I had canceled Abby's trip and let Olivia get her way again, she would have kept spiraling. Eli would still be in the dark. My parents would still believe she was the victim, and maybe I would have kept my spot in the will, but I would have lost something else. My voice, my self-respect, my daughter's trust. So no, I don't regret saying no. Not for 1 second, because that no saved us all. This isn't a happy ending. It's a real one, because families aren't fairy tales, and villains don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear smiles and ask you to babysit, but the truth, it doesn't care about appearances, it doesn't play favorites, it doesn't need permission. It just waits, quiet, patient, and when it finally speaks, it burns through every lie, every fake tear, every twisted story, until all that's left is what was always there. The fire, the silence, and the person who stood in both and didn't flinch. Story 3. They say rock bottom has a basement. I found mine the night my sister called me cheap. I was standing at her kitchen counter, holding a plate of sweet potatoes I couldn't afford, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd finally say thank you. Instead, she laughed. It wasn't much. She said, swirling wine I probably paid for, just some cheap help. That was the moment I stopped paying her mortgage. But to really understand why that one word cracked something open inside me, we need to rewind a year. It was New Year's Eve. I'd just left the bar, half drunk and fully frozen, when my phone rang. It was Morgan, my older sister. Her voice was wrecked, panicked sobs so loud I had to step into an alley to hear her. I thought something had happened to the kids. It hadn't. It was Jason, her husband. He was gone. No fight, no forewarning, just vanished. Took the car, emptied their joint savings, left a handwritten note on the microwave. I can't do this anymore. I need to find myself. I remember thinking, yeah, well, Jason was always the kind of guy who'd lose himself in a parking lot. Morgan had nothing. No job, no backup plan, just a mortgage she couldn't swing and 2 little boys who still asked when Daddy was coming home. I don't know what to do, she whispered. It sounded like swallowing glass. So I helped. No hesitation. First thing next morning, I wired over enough for 2 months of mortgage. Then I picked up extra shifts at the distribution warehouse. Then weekends at the dive bar I hadn't worked since college. 16-hour days. Maybe 4 hours of sleep. Tops. I kept a spreadsheet to stay sane. Mortgage, $1,900. Utilities, $300. Groceries, $500. All hers. I barely covered my own rent. My heater broke in February. I didn't fix it until March. I started showering at the gym, not because I was health conscious, but because I couldn't pay the water bill. Morgan never asked how I managed, just said things like, "You're a lifesaver," like I was dropping off a latte, not sacrificing my entire existence. And my parents, They knew. I told them. I wasn't looking for applause, just backup. Maybe talk to her, I asked. Get her to apply somewhere. She's grieving, Mom said. It's the least you can do, Dad added. The least? By June, I was $23,000 deep. I missed a friend's wedding because I couldn't afford the flight, skipped birthdays, ghosted group chats. My life shrank to numbers and naps and walking home past pawn shops I'd soon need. But I kept going, told myself I'd make it through December, just until the holidays, just long enough for Morgan to get on her feet. Then came Thanksgiving. I wasn't going to go. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in a week, but I missed the kids, so I dragged myself over, hoping maybe, just maybe, Morgan would acknowledge what I'd done. Their house looked too perfect. New throw pillows, matching napkin rings, candles everywhere. There were 2 turkeys, one for leftovers, she said casually. That turkey cost more than my last week's groceries. Everyone was there. Parents, cousins, neighbors. My dad gave a toast. Mom teared up. Morgan beamed like she'd won an award. Then cousin Max, never one for subtlety, asked how she managed to keep the house. Help, she giggled, sipping wine, but nothing major, just some cheap support to keep me afloat. Cheap. I felt it in my teeth. My grip on the wine glass tightened. I looked at her. Really looked. Not my sister, the woman who'd turned my exhaustion into a punchline. So I said it. Calm, quiet. Then I guess you won't mind paying for it yourself next month. The room went dead silent. Morgan blinked, then laughed again, like I was joking. I wasn't. Dad slammed his fork down. How dare you say that, he barked. They need you, Mom hissed. But I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just stood up, walked out, and canceled the scheduled payment the next morning. 8 days later, they showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door like creditors. Help her! Darren, Mom shouted. You can't just abandon her. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, not at first, but because something snapped inside me at that Thanksgiving table. A kind of realization. They didn't love me. Not really. They loved what I did for them, what I gave. And the moment I stopped giving, I was the villain. I watched their shadows flail across the frosted glass, my dad's fists clenched, Mom's voice shrill and shrieking. They stayed 10 minutes. I didn't open the door. 3 days later, Morgan texted me. You've ruined everything. They're blaming me. You don't know what you've done. I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it. Another message followed. You're disgusting. This is over $4,000. That's nothing to you. I had taken out a personal loan in July. Never told her. Never told anyone. Warehouse hours were down. Bar tips had dried up. I was drowning. But sure, Morgan, $4,000 is nothing. So I replied, then you won't mind paying it back. No answer. Instead, 2 strange men showed up at the bar I worked, said they were Jason's uncles. Jason was an only child. That was Dad. I knew his playbook, vague threats, intimidation, pretending he had people. The next night, someone keyed my car, big red letters, Leech. I reported it. Cops shrugged. A week later, my credit score plummeted 120 points. Someone opened 2 credit cards in my name, maxed them out. They used an old address. They knew the system. Insurance fraud was Dad's profession. After all, that's when I stopped playing defense. I started fighting back. The keying, the credit fraud, the strangers at work. My family had turned into a slow-moving car crash and I just stepped out of the wreckage. But they wanted me back in. Too bad. I was already building the bonfire. The first thing I did was pull every receipt, every transfer, Venmo request, bank deposit, screenshots of every "Can you help this month" text from Morgan, every thank you. I owe you one that aged like spoiled milk. I dropped it all in a folder and sent it without context to her mortgage lender. No cover letter, just raw evidence. Let them connect the dots. Next, I called CPS, an anonymous tip, told them about the wine bottles always out during playdates. That time Morgan drove home from Liam's birthday buzzed, how the kids once wandered into the lake's edge unsupervised. I gave facts, dates, no name, just concern. 2 days later, they were at her door. She called me screaming from a new number. I let it ring. Sean then blocked it. That was the beginning of the fall. Morgan's job hunt sputtered. Word spreads when you've got a CPS file. Her inner circle shrunk. And my parents, they went nuclear. They started parking across the street from my place. I noticed it first on a Thursday, Dad's old Buick under the streetlight. engine off, windows fogging. The next night, it was Mom's Corolla. They weren't there to talk. They were there to haunt. Dad always believed intimidation was a form of discipline. He didn't understand how much power silence had until I stopped reacting. I stopped parking in my usual spot, started slipping in through the alley entrance, let them sit there and rot. I kept a log dates, license plates, timestamps, photos. I knew where this could lead, and it did. The following Saturday, during peak bar hours, someone tapped my shoulder mid-shift. "Your family's outside," the bouncer said. "They're making a scene." I stepped out into the back alley. The moment the door shut, I saw the mom sobbing, Dad red-faced, and Morgan dead-eyed. "You're ruining us," she said. "No hello, no shame." "You're ruining yourself," I said. I told them if they ever came to my work again, I'd file for a restraining order. Dad lunged. He didn't hit me, he knew better in public, but he got close enough for spit to hit my face. "You think you're safe," he hissed. The bouncer stepped between us. They left. For now, the next morning, my power was out. Not a blackout, just my unit. I called the utility company. They said someone had reported the apartment as vacant and requested a shutdown. It took 5 hours and 2 trips to the service office to fix it. I needed to end this permanently. Morgan had never told her lender that Jason skipped town. On paper, he was still a cosigner. That meant every time she claimed financial hardship, she was committing fraud. I gathered the proof. The note Jason left, the texts from Morgan confirming he'd abandoned them, photos of the house in her name. Then I mailed the whole file to the bank. I didn't expect a miracle, but I knew it would shake something loose. It did. A week later, Morgan called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was cracked with panic. "You stupid piece of... They're freezing my account. They're saying I lied. They might repossess the house." She was breathless. Then silence. Then the click of a call ended in defeat. The car that had been parked across the street every night for weeks? Gone. But I wasn't done. That was just the warning shot. A quiet fell over the next few weeks. No calls, no knocks, not even a text from my mom pretending she missed me, which was exactly what scared me. They weren't done. They were recalibrating. They always came back louder, so I made moves of my own. I moved half my savings into a new account under a different name, changed the locks, started the paperwork to transfer jobs to a sister plant 3 states over. I'd had enough of this town, its stale air, and its ghosts, but there was one more piece I needed. Jason. Morgan's charming, alcoholic, finding himself I did a little digging, found his Facebook, made a burner account, some girl he used to know from high school. Took 2 days of dumb flirting before he started responding. He was still broke, still angry, still very, very bitter about how Morgan had tricked him into being the bad guy. I offered him a deal. "Contact the mortgage company," I said. "Tell them Morgan never asked for your consent on that loan adjustment. Tell them she used your name, forged your details." He hesitated, so I Venmo'd him $500. 2 days later, he made the call. And then the real dominoes fell. The bank opened a fraud investigation. They froze the mortgage account, the title on hold. Morgan got a letter, then a call, then a home visit. She called me again. This time, she didn't scream. She sobbed. "They're saying it's fraud. I didn't think it would go this far." I didn't answer. Then my phone rang again. "Dad, we know it was you," he said. I didn't deny it. "You're destroying your family." He growled. "You think you're clever. You think you're invincible. You forget I have your social security card. You forget what I can do." He hung up, and that's when I took the final step. I collected everything. Every wire transfer to Morgan, every thank you and every insult. Screenshots of Dad's threats, photos of their cars outside my place, my electricity bill, the police report for the vandalism, the fraud report, the CPS report. I sent it to the IRS, to the mortgage fraud department, to the school board where Morgan had just applied for a teaching assistant job, to Dad's office, where he'd just been elected treasurer of a local union. Then I packed. That weekend, I left the state. 14 hours of driving, a quiet apartment, a new job, new number, new name on the lease. I didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a forwarding address. And for the first time in over a year, I slept. Really slept. That's how long it took to feel human again. 6 months of no voicemails, no guilt trips, no one pounding on my door demanding I save someone from themselves. I was living in a smaller town now. Quiet, faded signs, a rental with creaky floors but peace in every corner. the kind of place where nobody knew my name, and no one cared to ask. I worked at a new plant, smaller, slower pace, less stress, picked up a rescue dog named Milo, muted bark, floppy ears, and a love for chasing his tail like it was personal. I even started dating again. Sarah Freckles, dry humor, and eyes that didn't flinch when I told her I wasn't close with my family. She never asked why, that's why I liked her. Then one morning in March, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name, my new name written in shaky, hesitant handwriting. I should have tossed it, but I opened it. It was from Morgan. 3 short paragraphs, no apology, just updates. She was living in a 2-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town. The boys were adjusting. Her car had been repossessed in January. CPS had shown up again after a neighbor reported loud screaming and something about broken glass. At the end, she wrote, "I'm not saying you were right, but I understand now." I read that sentence over and over again. Then I folded the letter, slid it into the back of a drawer, and didn't think about it again. 2 weeks later, I ran into someone from the old life. At a gas station, of all places. Drew, worked back at the warehouse, recognized me even with the beard and extra weight. He smiled, told me I looked good, said I'd done the smart thing by vanishing. Before he left, he added, "Your dad's not looking so hot. People say he's sick, real sick." I didn't ask what kind. I paid for my gas and drove off. 3 days later, my work email pinged. A message from an old high school classmate. "Hey, did you hear your dad's in the hospital?" Nope, I hadn't, and I wasn't going to visit. There's a difference between healing and forgetting. I hadn't forgotten. I just didn't bleed for them anymore. Then came the email that changed everything. Subject line: family reunion, just come once. It was from Michelle, my cousin. Eternal peacekeeper. The kind of person who brings cupcakes to a house fire. "Everyone will be there," she wrote. "It would mean a lot to the family to see you again." Then the kicker: no drama, I promise. That line made me laugh out loud. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't owe them anything, but a sick part of me was curious. What was left of the kingdom after the prince walked away? So I replied, "I'll come, 1 hour." The reunion was at my parents' new house. Smaller, duller. One story slapped onto a sad lawn that had clearly given up. The siding was mismatched, like the builder ran out of options halfway through. I parked at the end of the street, walked up slowly. No one came out to greet me. Inside smelled like pine sol and something bitter underneath. Desperation, maybe? My mom was the first to see me. Her mouth curled into this strange, brittle smile like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. My dad wasn't in the room. Morgan was. She looked deflated. Her clothes hung looser, eyes heavy, like life had hit her with a baseball bat and never stopped swinging. I nodded. She didn't say a word. Everyone acted like it was normal. Then Michelle clapped her hands and said, "Time for the surprise." I should have left. Instead, I followed the herd into the living room. There was a cake on the table, one of those cheap supermarket ones. Icing too thick, blue letters piped across it read, "Welcome back. Darren, we forgive you." I laughed. Out loud, deep, from the gut, the room froze. My dad walked in right then, thinner, grayer, hollow-eyed. He looked at the cake like it was a cross between an insult and an offering. "You forgive me," I said. No one answered. I stayed 7 more minutes. Didn't eat, didn't sit, just took in the circus. As I walked out, Morgan said, "He hasn't changed." She was right. I hadn't, but they had. They'd become caricatures of themselves, hollow shells stuffed with nostalgia and bad frosting. And I was done. Again. 2 weeks later, I was back in my rhythm. Work, gym, dog walks by the river. Sarah still smiling across breakfast. My world was intact. Then the knock came. Middle of a Tuesday. Jenna, smaller than before, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. She didn't ask to come in, just handed me an envelope. "I owe you this," she said. "Every cent, it's yours." Inside a check, $32,000. I blinked. How, I asked. Sold Jason's boat, cashed my 401k. The bank settlement helped. They called it a mutual error. No fees, just paperwork. 2 part-time jobs. Therapy. She looked me in the eye when she said it. "I'm not a good person, but maybe I'm not the same person." "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," she added. "I just want this to end." I nodded, took the envelope, closed the door, never cashed the check. Instead, I donated the entire amount to a nonprofit that helps men escape toxic family dynamics. On the memo line, I wrote for the ones who stayed too long. And then I packed. The morning I left for good. The sky was the kind of gray that made the whole world feel paused. I didn't tell anyone. No goodbye notes, no final warnings, just me, Milo, a duffel bag, and a tank of gas heading west. I didn't care where I landed. I just knew I wasn't staying. Not in a town that held the echo of every slammed door, every late-night cry from a sister who didn't thank me, every voicemail from a father who thought love meant leverage. I crossed 2 state lines that day, stopped at a gas station where no one knew my name, and exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. The next few months passed like water over glass. I worked a quiet job, took Milo to the park, learned to cook more than eggs and toast. I started sleeping more than 5 hours a night. Sometimes, I caught myself smiling at nothing in particular. Peace is loud when you've lived your life trying to please people who only ever wanted pieces of you. Then, one evening, I checked my old email, just once, out of habit, or maybe out of some masochistic curiosity. There was a message from Michelle. Subject line, "Mom's not doing well, she misses you." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew the script. I'd lived it too many times. Soft hands, sharp fingers, apologies wrapped in guilt. That was their pattern. Press the bruise until you came back bleeding. Not this time. A week later, a small manila envelope arrived at my P.O. box. I hadn't shared that address with anyone. But Jenna must have guessed. It was from the attorney. Inside was a death certificate. My father had passed pancreatic cancer, stage 4. He'd known for months, told no one. Typical. Also inside the envelope was a second one sealed in pale blue, labeled simply Darren. I opened it alone in my kitchen. Milo lay beside me, snoring softly. The sun was setting outside, throwing gold streaks across the laminate floor. The letter was written in shaky script, my father's handwriting unmistakable. Darren, I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I wasn't a good father. I used silence like a hammer and control like a blanket. I said cruel things because I didn't know how to say scared things. You were the only thing holding this family together. And when you let go, everything broke. You were right to let go. If this finds you, I hope you're not the man I was. I hope you're something better. Dad, I read it once. Then again. Then I set it in the sink, struck a match, and watched it curl into ash. Because closure doesn't always come with clean endings. Sometimes it comes in silence, in flames, in the sound of your own breath not hitching for once. 3 days later, Jenna showed up again. This time, she didn't come with a check or a speech. She came with her sons. They stood behind her on the porch, eyes wide, hands in pockets. I just wanted them to see you, she said. Why? Because you did more for them than their father ever did. And I never told them. I looked down at the boys. They looked older, quieter. One of them had my eyes. I knelt, gave them a small wave, asked how school was. One said, I got a B in science. I smiled. That's awesome. Jenna didn't stay long. She didn't ask to come in. Didn't push. Before she left, she said, I know we'll never be friends. I'm not asking, but I'm trying to raise them better than I was raised. Maybe that starts with truth. Then she left. I stood on the porch for a while, watching the sunset dip behind the trees. Milo nuzzled my leg, and I realized something. This was what healing looked like. Not big speeches, not dramatic breakdowns, just small moments. Peaceful endings. I never spoke to Michelle again. She kept sending emails for a while, holiday greetings, forwarded memes, passive-aggressive Bible verses. Eventually, they stopped. I guess even the loudest echo fades if no one claps back. Mom never reached out. Not after the reunion, not after Dad's death. I don't know if she ever will. And if she does, I won't answer. Because I don't owe that version of myself to anyone anymore. These days, my life is quiet. Weekends with Sarah and Milo, evenings filled with cooking experiments and long walks under fading streetlights. Sometimes I tell Sarah about the past, not all of it, just pieces. Enough for her to understand why I flinch when the doorbell rings unexpectedly. She listens, then she pulls me close and says, You're not there anymore. And she's right. I'm not. That place is a scar, not an open wound. A reminder of who I was when I still believed saving people would make them love me. There's one more thing. The nonprofit I donated the check to, they asked if I'd be willing to share my story. Anonymously, for men who needed a sign that it's okay to walk away. That family isn't always salvation, it's often obligation dressed up in guilt and nostalgia. I said yes. I wrote it all down. Every betrayal, every insult, every time I almost broke but didn't. And I ended it with this: sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you'll ever do. If you're reading this, and you've ever felt like the black sheep, the last straw, the villain in someone else's victim story, you're not alone. You're not heartless. You're not broken. You're brave. Because it takes courage to stop bleeding for people who'd never offer you a band-aid. I stopped, and I never looked back.